Yes, yes, so have you. Okay, thanks for those that are dropping something in the chat. Yeah, thank you, Kendi Ajayi. I can see you. Thanks for joining. Thanks for coming. And Mrs. Lydia, thanks for joining us too. So, first things first, I want us to have a short icebreaker. And this is what we're going to start with today. It's just a very short icebreaker. And please, I want us to participate. Maybe like 2 or 3% can just give something to just share their worst class experience, the worst experience you've ever had in a class, the worst experience you've ever had in a class. This is my own worst experience. So, what's the worst experience you've ever had in a class while you're taking a class? So, I would like some. I want us to be free. This is a teachers forum, right? And I believe every one of us have thought one way or the other. So, if you want to talk, I think to start with, I want to give Mashambo this opportunity to speak because he's the first person to join this event. So, Mashambo, I want you to just share with us your worst experience in a class. Can you do that for us? Mashambo, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Good. All right.
Yeah, so I have to explain about my worst experience in a classroom. Hello?
He said?
Yeah, I think
Can you take that again, please?
Okay, so the question is, I have to explain my worst experience as a teacher in a classroom.
Oh, I don't, I can't, I didn't get what you said, please. Okay, let's just, so we don't take a lot of our time on that. So I think I'll just share mine, which I believe is something that is popular in class. So it's just a scenario where you're in a class and you've taught with the best of your abilities, you've explained, you've drawn diagrams, you've brought out different things for students, and everybody, you ask them, do you understand what I've told you? And the first thing everybody says is yes, everybody nods, everybody gives a thumbs up, everybody show excitement, and give them some assessment, and they're not able to bring anything to the table. They're not able to explain what you've told them. Most times you'll be so amazed at what they've done. So that is the brain behind this event that we're having today, and that is why we call it blended learning. So this is bringing the old method. We have a lot of people, they say that's the old way of teaching. That's the traditional method where you have a teacher coming to the class and he writes everything on the board. They draw diagram, they try to explain in the best way they can, and they explain to students, and students are like, okay, we've gotten that. But sometimes it comes to be the brilliant ones that get the thing, or the people that can go extra mile to get some of those concepts that were being shared. So having that, we understand that that could not be efficient enough. So we see that, okay, we have people that are good with that. So the next thing we also have is, now that we are having the age of digital, now that we're in the digital age, we have people coming with their various resources. We have people coming with different things online, different concepts that could help us to make our work easier. For instance, fet.colorado.edu, where you have a lot of things that you can simulate for students to understand some concepts. So now we are looking at, how do we bring this together with the old method? You have different things you can share with your students online. Sometimes you can tell your students, go online and download this and see what I've taught you. But sometimes most of them don't seem to get that. And we also have the fact that you can also bring about group work and group assessment. So in the spirit of blended learning, we are looking at bringing your group work, your task, bringing about the online platforms, the virtual assistants that we have, and the classroom, the normal classroom, the traditional classroom that we have, bringing them together as one and ensuring that the students are having the best they can. And when it comes to assessment, such that we don't assess in a wrong way, such that we assess in a way that every student is carried along and every student knows that, oh, I am being assessed based on what I've gotten from this class. So it's not that you just give them an assessment and it's beyond what they are being taught. So that is the basic things, and those are the important things we'll be doing in this event. So, and I'm very glad that every one of us could attend, and I'm seeing that in our classroom we'll be having better outputs in our classrooms. So our next thing is I'll be introducing our speakers. We're having 3 speakers that will be joining us in this event this afternoon. So I'll introduce them before we'll be having the opening speech by Mrs. Ebili. So this is Frances Van Sloun. She's a dedicated advocate for hands-on experiential learning with over a decade of leadership in informal education. She graduated with a degree in mechanical engineering from the University of St. Thomas in St. Paul, Minnesota in 2011, and has been committed to showing young learners just how capable they are ever since. Working closely with the WAAW Foundation since 2013, Frances has helped bring creative, immersive learning experiences to students across Africa. Now, as the education manager at the Works, an engineering museum in Bloomington, Minnesota, she leads a team of educators who spark curiosity and empower kids to build, create, and be their own problem solver. So please let's welcome Frances Van Sloun to this event this afternoon, as she will be sharing some things with us. Thank you. If you can put your clap emoji, if you can drop something, please just tell Frances you're welcome.
Wonderful. Thank you all so much. Todu, right now I'm disabled from sharing my screen. So I do need.
Okay. I will do that, but I'll call you when you're to speak. But right now, I just want to introduce the speakers we have. Thank you very much. All right. So our second speaker that will be coming up to join us soon is Dr. Cheryl. Dr. Cheryl is a professor and a dean of the School of Science, Technology, Health, and Human Services at Voice University, Denmark. She formerly served as a senior teaching faculty at the University of Massachusetts, Amherst, as the former department chair of mathematics and computer science at Claflin University. She was named the Harry N. and Alice Carson Teasdale Endowed Professor. Dr. Swania was successful in leading and establishing the inaugural ABET accreditation for the computer science program at Claflin University. Dr. Swania is the founder and CEO of Swania Consulting, LLC, as well as the non-profiting organization, the SIS Foundation Incorporation. So please, let's join hands together to welcome Dr. Cheryl. She's also in this call. Thank you very much. And the last person that will be, joining us, yeah, he prefers to be anonymous, like in terms of his picture. So, but he's a wonderful person that will be joining us in terms of assessment. So that's Clement Popoola. He is an assessment expert with extensive experience in educational testing. He works with the National Examination Council, NECO, where he plays a pivotal role in designing, implementing, and managing assessment frameworks that ensures proper academic evaluation and integrity all over Nigeria. Actually, he has traveled wide and now is joining us online. His commitment and dedication make him one of the figures in advancing standard of academic assessment in Nigeria. Please let's join our hands together for him too, as he's joining us this afternoon. So over to the next thing, to go fast into what we have this afternoon. I'll be calling on Mrs. Ebili, the Vice President of WAAW Foundation, and she'll be giving us an opening speech. Let's join our hands together for Mrs. Ebili.
All right, Toluwani, thank you so much for putting this together. And thank you for everyone that is here, especially Francis, Dr. Swai, and Clement. We really do appreciate y'all's time y'all's time in sharing this very, very important ongoing strategy that is required in education. While being the vice president of WAAW Foundation, I'm also a dean of instruction at a middle school in Texas. And incidentally, my school is currently on a 3-year grant to implement blended learning at our campus. So this is a topic that is very dear to my heart. All right, so we know today we are talking about the future of education. We know that the way students learn, or the way we learned about 10 years ago, it's not the way this current generation is learning. Our current students are digital natives. They are, we currently work in an ever-evolving landscape. 20 years ago, we did not think of AI as it is today. So our students, our scholars, pupils, whatever we call them in different parts of the world, are very familiar, sometimes actually more tech savvy than we are. And for us to ensure that they are learning and able to meet the demands of the future workplace, we need to change how we teach. So blended learning is just a great way of blending traditional learning and technology in the classroom. So you maintain the human connection of face-to-face learning with the flexibility and personalization of online resources. And I'm supposed to be talking about the positive effect of integrating blended learning strategies in your classroom. One of the biggest thing is the personalized learning. It's always important when students have ownership of their learning. Blended learning allows educators, all of us, to tailor our content and pace it to individual needs. I'm not going to say much because you have great people that are going to talk a lot more about it. Engagement soars with blended learning. There's a lot of engagement that increases in your class with blended learning. And it definitely also enhances teacher effectiveness. Imagine a class of 30, 50, 100 students with one teacher. Blended learning allows the teacher to be more effective in the classroom, providing high quality instruction to all students simultaneously. And the biggest part of it, which is the part that, well, I wouldn't say the biggest part of it, but a great component, which is the part that Clement is talking about, is that assessment. Using the digital tools that you will be learning today, you can actually access your students' knowledge real time. And going back to what Toluwani's experience as a teacher, you're able to effectively check for understanding using online tools within the classroom. So without further much ado, I am going to let the speakers share their wealth of knowledge with us. And again, thank you all for being here and be willing to change the landscape of education in the world. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Abili. We're so grateful for that speech. Please, let's give a warm round of applause for that. Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you, everyone. Okay, so moving to the first speech, moving to the first presentation, that will be from our first speaker, that's Francis. So let's join Francis. Let's welcome Francis. Please, let's drop our favorite emoji as Francis will be bringing this on board. Thank you, everyone. Over to you, Francis.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Tolu. I want to double check that you can see my screen. Can you give me a thumb? You can see it?
Yeah, perfect.
All right. I'm so grateful. Thank you all for being here this lovely day, morning for me, afternoon for you. Good afternoon. As Tolu said, my name is Francis Van Sloun, and I'm an education manager at an engineering museum here in Minnesota in the United States. So I've been working for over a decade with all different kinds of educators in varying settings, all different kinds of places. And really, if I had to boil down what my work has been, over those years, it has been to think critically about how we teach and communicate specifically in the world of STEM. So that being science, technology, engineering, and math. And of course, my focus as a mechanical engineer has largely been on engineering, and that's what I'm doing now. So I manage a team of educators that go out into the community. We also have a physical space where kids come to us. And we are working continually as a team to figure out the best ways to reach and actually empower kids to do science in a hands-on way, but we'll get there. So my specialty is in STEM, but I know that we have a lot of different types of educators with us today. And the things I want to share, what I want to share with you, I think can be applied no matter what you might teach. Some of the examples I give and some of the things I'll talk about really pertain specifically to the world of STEM. But I will throw in here and there examples of how this can apply in lots of different settings and lots of different subjects. It's really a universal, well, in a couple different universal teaching tools. So just know that if you hear me talking about science examples quite a bit. Okay, so when we think about the sciences, tech and math, engineering, and what we hope for our students that end up choosing those paths as careers and they go out into those fields, when we think of those students, I think, and how we teach them, I've observed we can often miss the mark on what is most important to encourage. Tolu kind of talked about this a little bit. We often hyperfixate on getting the concepts down. Just speaking, drawing on the whiteboard, displaying information, and then asking, do you understand? And we're really kind of assessing, we're looking, can the student solve the equation? Can they define a principle? Can they memorize something and put it back out at a way that I can say, yes, good job, you've learned the material? Can they get to essentially the right, quote unquote, answer? And there's an inherent problem with that teaching. And it's not just that it's trickier to reach your students. It's that the challenges that students will face once they've joined the workforce and they're out in the real world looking and dealing with real world problems. In those situations, there are not clear right and wrong answers. The whole reason that we have those problems is that we collectively do not know what the solution is. There's no one around to give us a good grade or a gold star for getting the correct answer, because no one knows what the answer is. That's why it's a problem. The big problems that are facing our communities, local and global, the problems that are complex, there's lots of gray area, and any possible solution is going to have downsides, right? There's no perfect answer that solves all of the things. And that's especially when we're looking at like tech careers and different areas where the sciences are involved. So, and research shows that it turns out that the most innovative thinkers, when they get to the workforce, they end up being the people that are unfazed by the possibility of failure. They rely heavily, they lean into curiosity. They're the people that are not afraid to get things wrong. They might seek excellence in their work, but not perfection. And so when we think about this and how to put this into, what do we do instead? If we're not trying to help kids primarily get to the right answer, what are we trying to have them do? We are trying, hopefully, to encourage their curiosity. So they're asking those questions themselves. and giving them tools, giving them practice in problem solving. So, as educators, I think it's our job to get away from looking for the right answer and searching for perfection. So here's where we get into a lot of what my work has been. So I have worked at a number of different organizations, WAAW Foundation, and among them, I started helping teach and traveling with WAAW Foundation back in 2013. And all the way to now, where I'm working at a place called the Works Museum. And, oh, whoops, I am jumping ahead here. At the Works, we're really focused on getting kids building, creating, doing things with their own hands. I've been able to bring that with WAAW Foundation too. WAAW Foundation has been really committed to that since the beginning, which is fantastic. So it's really about creating and starting from a place of an experience. And we're going to get into what really that means to me. That is, here we go. So this is a tool called the Experiential Learning Tool. It's just a flow chart that takes us through, it's like a guide map that I use when I am teaching, when I am planning a lesson. And it is a very simple tool and sometimes can be extremely difficult to execute, right? So the ideal of experiential learning is that you're starting with an experience. It might be an experiment. It might be building something. It might be hearing something or watching a video. The point is that it involves the senses, and it requires the students taking in an experience without you spoon feeding it to them, right? From having that experience, it leads naturally into asking questions, into this phase of reflection. So instead of jumping in once an experiment has been done and saying, okay, here's what's going on here, you wait and you let students come up with their own curious moments, right? So they start wondering how, why, what, where. Getting to those questions themselves really encourages and sparks that process, that curiosity mindset. Once you have those questions, once students have done that reflecting without you giving any input, maybe prompting them by asking a few things, expanding, but not giving them information yet. Once you've done that, then you move in to the area of making connections. And it turns out that this is often where we want to start. This is where we often come in and go to the whiteboard or the chalkboard and say, okay, here is what we are learning about today. Here is the definition of this word or this principle. Here is the equation that we're going to be working with. Here is these concepts that we're referencing. And it's curious to me, the example I like to give here, it is curious to me that we do this in the sciences and that we don't start with experience, because there's plenty of other subjects that naturally start with the experience. Think about it this way. If you were teaching literature and you were going to have a lesson on Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen, you do not have your kids come in, your students come in, sit down and say, all right, here's the definition of metaphor. And here's the definition of a simile and plot and character. And do all of that and say, this is how Jane Austen used them. And then have them read the book. That's not what we do, right? What do you have to do before, if you were teaching that book in a literature class? You would have the students read the book first. You would let them have the firsthand experience of taking in that story. They get to enjoy it, they get to sense it, they get to imagine the story playing out for themselves first. They start with an experience. Then they come in with questions, and then you make those connections to all of the all of the writing style and plot and character and first person perspective. All of those elements you can make connections to. So it's very clear to us, especially in literature or the arts, that we start with experience. So I try my best to start using that as an example and start from experience in STEM learning too. Once we've made those connections, often it leads us to pick the next direction. So if we've done one experiment, it might lead to another. There have been questions and things that have come up in this reflection and connection cycle that naturally lead to where we're headed next. And it's always important to go back to letting students, once again, have a sensory experience where they get to take in the world for themselves. So that is the experiential learning tool. I've been using this for a long time as a guide to help teachers ask the question, am I truly starting with experience? And how can I get there faster? How can I, of course, you might need to make an introduction to a lecture, but in what ways, how can I get to giving students an experience where they're taking something in for themselves fastest? Because that's really where curiosity spikes. Kids learn and do on their own. They become involved with all of their senses. So here's where we get into the blended learning model. And as I was thinking about this and looking at tech and online resources as ways to enhance this method of experiential learning, it popped out to me. It pops out from, it flows naturally. These two things easily mesh together. So really our online resources and all these tech tools, they can give our students access to experiences and give them a lot of agency, give them a lot of ownership in their own learning. So what I'm going to do is walk through these steps of the experiential learning tool once more and think about and give examples of how blended learning, about how tech and online resources can be involved at all these various steps along the way. So let's blend. So when we think about this experience, this is really the biggest area where having access to online resources can be the biggest boost. And really, I'm gonna jumping down to the bottom of the slide here. Online resources can make it much easier to start with experience. Sometimes, you're all busy collecting all of the materials to do a project. You can't do that every day in your classroom. We know that. There's just not time as a human being to do that all of the time. You can't always run an experiment. So online tools can help kids have their own experience in a much lower threshold to entry kind of way. It can give them a lot of exposure through things that they interact with online. So some examples of this that I was thinking about. Of course, there's a million videos out there. Videos could be used to watch experiments and things that aren't possible in your classroom, right? Of course, we love whenever possible for kids to do things with their own two hands, but we know it can't always be that way. So going online can be a great way to get that exposure. You can learn arts and design skills online. There's online studios that kids can work in, or students can work in. Another thing that I really like when I was thinking about this is that there's easy ways to incorporate human story. You can find all different types of media. So let's say in that Jane Austen example, you can go online and find the millions of recreations of Jane Austen or art inspired by her work, and give students more access points and see other people's interpretations. You can also follow online tutorials, right? And it could be anything under the sun, right? It's everything from coding to cooking, as I like to put in there. You can create your own music. There's all of these different ways to enhance and create an actual experience. And it creates an easy way to start and engage that curiosity from the beginning. Again, the point being, give students a sensory experience that they can take in and evaluate as early as you can. So when we move on to reflection, there are ways to incorporate online sources into this as well. So in this section that's really about asking questions, what comes up, what emotions come out of, what's your reaction to what you witnessed, what you experienced in the last step. And this is one that I think we are robbing currently in our current society. We are robbing ourselves of the ability to reflect in meaningful ways. It is very easy to not sit and ponder and think. And so creating space for that is really necessary so that we encourage the practice of getting reflective. So some ways that you can use online resources and for this, or just tech in general, keeping digital logs or journals of their observations. So capturing their reflections in an online notebook, something that's easily accessed by multiple people, can be a great connection point. Students can bring their questions to topical forums. So you can think more broadly about, oh, this isn't just happening in our classroom. We're not just having this conversation here. There are other people around me, but also around the world who are experiencing this, having the same questions as me, and there's more interaction that can occur. And then, of course, they can learn more. They can get out there, do research, find related sources, and find different ways, different avenues online to ask these important questions. Okay, when we move on to connection, this can be another amazing place to incorporate some online learning, some online sources. So going online, this can give you access to a lot of, or give students access to the real world impacts and uses of the subject they're learning about. Let's say it's chemistry and you're learning about plastics. You've done an experiment, you've tried something out yourself, You've tried chemical reactions to make a plastic. In this connection phase, it can come out of the laboratory, right? They can go online and see the ways these materials get used or might be used if they're an advanced or new emerging material. So it's just one example, of course, but the ability to reach out into the rest of the world to see how things are used, super, super valuable. Also, in this realm of connection, you have access. You can seek out experts in the fields that you're studying without having distance as a barrier. So I put in here, you can find a way to email just about anyone. I actually started doing this with my students in the last couple of years. And as they're asking questions, in one instance, it was a space camp. We were talking about space suits and the types of materials that they use, and we were finding limited resources online. I said, you know what? Let's try reaching out. Let's try reaching out to professors. Let's try reaching out to NASA. And we actually got a response from a real engineer at NASA. You can find ways to interact with people and have students have interactions with people that they never would get in their normal day-to-day life. So this can be a very cool one. Most of the time, experts in their fields are very excited when young people are interested in what they do. So I've actually had a surprising amount of success with this. You should try it out. Also, in this realm of making connections, you can allow students to dive deeper into research. If they find an area of passion, let them go, right? You can allow them, they have the ability themselves to go deeper into any part of a subject that they want. And then the other real benefit here in this connection area is that we have more of an ability, I alluded to this a little bit already, we have more of an ability when we have these online resources to connect with real people and their real stories. And what that does, if you're seeing how this concept, this principle, this book, this art, whatever, is having an impact on the real world and influencing somebody's story, changing somebody's life, these are the ways that we help students grow into citizens that care about the world and care about the outcomes. It is human story connecting to someone else's heart, developing that sense of empathy that is highly, highly motivating for students. And so you can make these connections and you can learn about these stories and the way that these things play out in the real world. All right, at the end here, finding a direction, finding the next experience we want to have. So blended learning really naturally encourages students to develop agency in their learning. If you think about it in the classroom without any online tools, often the teacher is choosing the next course of action because it just has to be that way. There isn't a way for a student to gather and figure out what might we want to try next. And so incorporating blended learning really gives students this ability to choose, to have agency. And when they have agency, they also care more about what they're learning. And what comes next for having a new experience can often naturally come out of their questions, the research they've done, the findings they've had, the experiences, the connections that they've made with other people online. And yeah, what could be better than empowering students to find and follow their own path? That sense of ownership can be huge in keeping students engaged. All right, so this is my case for why. Why do all of this? And when I really think about overall what blended learning can bring in, it can come in all of these different parts of this learning cycle, which is really exciting for me. I think it opens up so many opportunities and gives students that agency and that ownership in their own learning. So that is what I have for you this morning. Thank you so much for your time and attention. And hello again from over here in the United States.
Well, thank you very much, Frances. Thank you so much. And thanks everyone for paying attention and for joining all through. So please let's give Frances, yeah, a like, a love, emoji, anything you can to show that you are with her. Thank you very much. So I just want us to, I know we have questions and we have materials to also distribute to us in terms of some of us might have some things we have in our mind. You want to conceptualize it. We can also assist you in bringing out what you have in mind to make your classroom to a very, very important classroom, to make it very, very awesome. We have some things that we can actually help you to bring it from concepts and the likes of what Frances has shared to bring it to your classroom. So we're really happy to join you with that. But in that regard, I would like us to go straight into the next person we have. And I'm very sure this is somebody you want to meet and this is somebody you want to hear from. She's actually very good. And I mean, very, very good at what she does. I introduced her sometimes before now, so I'll still be standing on the existing protocol and I'll still be bringing up Dr. Cheryl Swania on to share with us from perspective. Thank you very much. Dr. Cheryl, over to you.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
How are you this morning? I'm excited to be here this morning. I am Dr. Cheryl Swania. I am the Dean of the School of Science, Technology, Health and Human Services at Voorhees University here in the United States of America in Denmark, South Carolina. So I'm very, very excited to be here. And so I know your topic is redefining education with blended learning strategies. And this is something I know a lot about. I've worked in industry. I've been a K-12 educator, teaching mathematics. Now I'm in higher ed. I'm a computer scientist. I'm a technologist. And so I create online content all the time. I teach online quite a bit. And even in my face-to-face classes, I use different learning management systems while teaching. It's not just for online classes. You can also incorporate learning management systems in your day-to-day classes. In fact, I use them to really manage my course. And so it's a good way of keeping track of your communications with students and their coursework. So today I will be talking to you about integrating digital tools with teachers. And so I will focus on 3 blended learning strategies. And these 3 blended learning strategies include best practices for virtual classrooms, integrating virtual content to enrich learning, and strategies for engaging students in online and hybrid environments. So let's talk about some of the best practices for virtual classroom. And just know that most of these strategies that I'm going to present to you today, I actually use them in my class room. So these 5 things that you see listed here are very, very important to have, an effective classroom such that you are able to deliver your content in a very effective way. And so at the beginning of every semester, it's important that I prepare a structured environment, that I use the technology in a very effective way, and I'm inclusive. I want to make sure that all the students in the classroom have access to all the materials and can see and hear what I have to share with them. It's good to always be there for your students and be supportive of them throughout the semester, the quarter, however your academic year is structured. And then the last best practice is establishing guidelines for interaction. That's very, very important. So these next few slides, I'm going to delve into each one of these. And so I've used several different learning management systems. I've used Blackboard, I've used Moodle, and currently I'm using Canvas. And Canvas is new to me. But regardless of the learning management system I use, you want to make sure that you're using a platform that such that your layouts are consistent from week to week. And you may say, what are you referring to? So when you structure your course virtually using a learning management system, one of the things that I do, I have week 1, week 2, week 3, but the layout is the same. For example, I have a list called things to do. And so and under my things to do, it lists all the different activities that the students have to complete for the week, assignments, quizzes, and I also make all my assignments due at the same time every week, except for exams. But assignments are due on the weekend by 11:59 p.m. And the reason why you use a consistent layout, you want the students to be clear about, course expectations when assignments are due, when quizzes are due, when you take exams. And so you want to alleviate any type of confusion. And so another thing that you can focus on in creating, a consistent layout, make sure from week to week, because you're going to be talking about different things, you want to make sure you clearly state your objectives. This is what we're going to learn this week. And these are this is the schedule of activities that we're going to complete this week. So what am I saying? Set the expectations for the course at the beginning of the course, okay? Not in the middle, not at the end. Because when students see that you're consistent and you set expectations, they clearly see that you're organized. And students can quickly identify when you are not organized. And so since we're talking about integrating in tools and you're in an online platform, you need to know what types of technology that you can leverage effectively. So we have Zoom, we have Google Classroom, there's Microsoft Teams. This is just a few in common, tools that you can use for virtual / online learning. Now, I must admit, my preference is Zoom. I love Zoom. But again, you feel free to use Google Classroom and Microsoft Teams. I use Teams sometimes, but I'm more proficient personally at Zoom. But these are just a few of the tools that are out there. But when I'm in that online environment, I'm using Zoom. I like to do different activities with my students, and one is Jamboard. If you ever use Jamboard as a student, can I get a thumbs up? Because, to me, Jamboard is a lot of fun. Jamboard is a tool that's provided by Google. So it's very fun. It's like sticky notes, okay? Virtual, sticky notes. So if I'm doing an activity with a student and they're in their groups working, I give them, the instructions for that activity, and I may give them a specific topic, and they go into Jamboard and create these virtual sticky notes. So when I teach, I try to create a paperless environment, and because you're teaching online, of course, it's paperless, okay? And so using tools like Jamboard, Padlet, and Miro allows you to do that virtually. You want to make sure everyone in your class has access to the technology and all the course content. You want to make sure that when you're teaching virtually, because you have students of all types, some students with disabilities, different types of abilities. So you want to make sure you turn the captions on, and you also want to make sure for those who are in the asynchronous environment, maybe their schedules are different and can't attend virtual online, you want to provide a video of the class. So make sure those videos have captions, or even the transcripts from the class have captions as well. And another thing is that there's this accessible document that provides guidelines for creating content that's mobile friendly and accessible to students. It's called WCAG, Web Content Accessibility Guidelines. Feel free to Google it to learn, what those guidelines are for, designing user-friendly, accessible content. You want to always be there for your students, offer virtual office hours, for example. I meet with my students, say, for example, say Tuesdays and Thursdays from 3 to 5. Out in Zoom, I have, my office hours. So anybody can just drop in, and you can see virtually when the students are in the waiting room, just like what we're doing here today. We're using Zoom, and we admit them, one at a time. So make sure you're there, and they know when your office hours are and when they can actually meet. You can also use discussion boards or forums to allow students to ask questions and share resources. Now, one thing that I use in my classroom is Piazza. I don't know if you ever used Piazza before. If you have, do a thumbs up. Piazza is a great tool that allows students to ask questions to the teacher, to the TAs, or to each other. So it's not just teacher-student communication, but it's also student-to-student communication. So these are just different types of tools that you can integrate into the virtual environment. It's important also that you establish guidelines for interaction. Very important. From day one, you have to set the tone. You have to set the tone. You are the leader of the classroom. And so, because one thing don't want to have in your classrooms who students who are not respectful. And you want to make sure that you communicate effectively and that you're very clear in your communication. So from day one, make sure that you set clear expectations. For example, those expectations could be when assignments are due, when exams are taken, you know, and sometimes things come up where you have to be a little bit flexible and not so rigid, because life does happen. And so make sure you communicate to students that, hey, I need you to come to class virtually. And so one of the things I do, like on my course syllabus, as a part of that grade, I have a participation grade. A lot of instructors, if they do it, it's 5% or 10%. But if you don't come to class, you know, you can't say you participated, you know, in class. Because one of the things, and I'm gonna talk about it a little later, that I do is where we're in Zoom virtually, you know, I give them activities virtually and we go into breakout groups. And so if you're not there, if the student is not present, they can't participate. And so they're either going, well, in my class, it's always 10%. But you know, some of my colleagues do 5%, but to me, it's important that the students be there to engage with each other, because I believe that working collaboratively together and having students participate in their own learning is imperative with each other. And it, you know, facilitates the learning process. So let's look at integrating virtual content to enrich learning. So I'm going to look at incorporating interactive tools, utilizing multimedia resources, creating personalized learning paths, enabling collaborative learning, and introducing real-world applications. Now, you'll notice that as I go through these next few slides, some things may overlap slightly from my previous session, okay? And so, I don't know, just a thumbs up if you have ever participated in any type of gamified learning like Kahoot. I love Kahoot. Just give me a thumbs up if you participated in Kahoot. After I've taught my lesson, I always do this formative assessment with Kahoot. And Kahoot is an online, you know, platform that allows you to assess, you know, if the students understood the content that you taught. I do this after every classes, particularly my programming class. And also, you can have virtual labs, okay? There are different types of simulation tools that are out there, like Labster for science experiment, or Code HS for programming practice. So these aren't the only two, but these are just a few. You can also utilize multimedia resources. One of the things that I do with my PowerPoint presentations is that I embed, you know, videos from YouTube. So if I'm talking about specific topics, say if I'm teaching my user experience course, and there's an expert in the field that's talking about a specific topic or can better clarify a specific concept, I will embed, you know, that video into my PowerPoint presentation. And so, and it also gives you an opportunity to, you know, people bring different perspectives on different topics. And, you know, I may explain it one way, but using another resource may help clarify, you know, the concept to the students. You can also create or use resources on Canva just to summarize, you know, your data or the different processes that you may be talking about. And so I think it's very, very important that you create personalized learning paths. There's different ways to do that. You can use adaptive learning platforms like Dreambox or Smart Sparrow. And what these types of software actually do, it allows you to the content that you're trying to teach to be adjusted based on performance. Okay. And then there's branching scenarios. There are different types of design activities that you can integrate using tools like Articulate, Storyline. And so in this case, notice that the students are involved. Okay. So the students are able to choose the content, you know, based on, you know, what they are interested in or want more information about. So this is very important to me, collaborative learning. I mean, I think students learn best when they are engaged in their learning with other students. I use this strategy called POGLE. And POGLE is an acronym for process-oriented guided instruction learning. And basically, POGLE basically says, okay, group your students in groups of 4 or 5, right? I mainly use 4 students per group, depending on the number of students in my class, but on average 4 students. And each student in the group has a role to play, right? One may be manager, one may be recorder, one may be presenter, another may be the reflector, because we don't want anyone in the group not participating. And so we want all the students in the class, in each group, to be involved collaboratively in their learning. I've already talked about Piazza, but then there's Slack. Okay, Slack is another type of tool that you can use to have. It's like it's like a chat, right? It's just an online chat where you can just share information. You know, it's like texting, but it's an app. So, but Piazza, I like Piazza. You know, like I said, I actually do use Piazza in all of my courses. In fact, when I had TAs, I would let my TAs, you know, more interactively engage with the students with Piazza. The next thing is introducing real world application. I have many friends who are experts in computer science, and my research is in human computer interaction. So sometimes I may bring a guest lecturer to talk about a specific topic. If they're not able to attend virtually, then I would have them to do maybe 15-minute at the most, maybe 10-minute recorded video on a particular topic. Another thing you can do is you can give them case studies or journal articles to read about a specific topic, and you discuss it. They can go into their breakout groups and discuss it and come back and provide, you know, feedback as I ask questions about, you know, that particular case study or journal article. And so the last strategy is for engaging students in online and hybrid environments. And so we want to make sure that we build a strong sense of community, use active, not just learning techniques, but use active learning techniques. And as I stated in the previous slide about POGLE, we want to make sure we encourage collaboration, and we want to make the learning for the students their own, right? Because all students learn differently. No 2 students are the same. And each student has his or her own learning style. And so we want to make sure we make learning personalized. And we want to ensure regular and meaningful feedback. Don't just grade work, or if a student do a presentation in class, that you don't give feedback. So how do we build a strong sense of community? Well, on the first day of class, you should do an icebreaker, because icebreakers, get the blood flowing, wakes the student up, it fosters interaction. And so you can have the students do it within, if you have a large class, you can have the students get into small groups and introduce themselves, or you can tell the students to turn to their neighbor and introduce themselves. It's all different types of icebreakers out there in the virtual world that you can find on the internet. And hey, it's just a good way to get the juices flowing with the students. Next, you want to be able to, as I said in the beginning, set expectations for participation, because, this is so important. So when you establish these communication norms, like say, for example, in Piazza, I've had the experience of students just put anything out there in the Piazza. You just can't, share all your worries, to the class. So you have to establish norms, right? For example, students can only put content in Piazza that relates to the class. You can't share answers to assignments in Piazza. Okay, so it's important that these communication norms are established from day one. And no disrespect. You have to respect each other. So if you don't set it from day one, it's going to be a problem, because you never know what you'll get. And create a supportive environment. Make sure the language that we use is inclusive. We want the environment, that virtual environment, to be welcoming. We want that environment to be inviting. We don't want to exclude anyone. So it's important that we have, respectful communication and collaboration. Like, say, for example, within Zoom, you can conduct an interactive poll if you want to do a quick formative assessment to make sure that the students are learning. You can also do breakout rooms, as I mentioned before, and also, for the semester or quarter, however your school is structure, you can do hands-on projects within the group. So when students are involved, in their projects, they get a chance to choose what topics they are interested, in. So whatever project, a topic for a particular project that they're interested in, make sure that they are applying the concepts that you're taught in the course. And so this particular slide really, focuses on group projects, things I've already talked about, but let me focus on peer reviews. It's one thing for the instructor to, grade and review student work, but it's another thing when a peer reviews student work. And so it's good, to have some type of survey or document for students to complete and give to the other student. So this is a very non-threatening assessment of student work from another student. Make learning personalized. Again, if you're doing a group project or individual project, let the group or the individual choose the project, instead of the instructor telling the student which one to complete. And make sure, you're not rigid, and be flexible, because students, many students work, some students have families, and make sure that you provide, alternatives for students being able to access the class content for that day if they miss class. So offer those asynchronous options. And not only for those who miss class, offer students maybe with certain disabilities and different learning styles. So you want to be accommodating. Feedback is so imperative. Hey, 2 times throughout the semester, I do quick check-ins. It may be just a little 5-question survey, something that I create in Google. You can do this very easily in Google and put the link in your online platform. And then that's a way of you, in a very formative way, assessing how you're doing as an instructor. And also provide personalized feedback. Don't grade an assignment with no feedback. That's not going to enhance the student's learning. You have to provide feedback. Don't mark something wrong and not say why it's wrong. A better way of, solving that particular problem. So make sure you're checking in and providing feedback. Listen, this was great. This was awesome. I hope that some of the strategies and best practices that I shared with you this morning will help you create a more effective and collaborative online learning experience for your students and for yourself. Just remember to make that virtual environment very engaging, and whether it's online or hybrid. So, hey, incorporate these blended learning strategies into your virtual class. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Dr. Cheryl. We're so grateful for those insights you've given us. So, I must really say that was a very, very insightful one. And we have a lot of questions for you in the chat. You can just look into that and answer some of them. But we'll still get to a point where we'll still ask those questions, and everyone will be able to ask their question directly. So we'll be getting there soon. And just to buttress what Dr. Cheryl said, for those of us that are looking at those LMS, majority of those things that she shared are free. So for those of us that might be using that for Canvas, I know Canvas is a free LMS for everyone. And okay, thanks. My voice is low. I believe you can hear me now. So Canvas is a very, very good platform where we can use. And some of the things she said, and the last thing I would like to pick is that you don't mark a student wrong without telling the student what they've done wrong. I think that's one of the good ways to improve on what we've taught them. That's a very good one. Thank you, Dr. Cheryl. Thanks for sharing this with us. So the last person I'll be giving us a very, very good presentation this evening before we ask our questions is I would like us to welcome him. I've introduced him earlier on. He works with the Nigerian Examination Council, and he has been working seriously and earnestly with the assessment body that's with NECO Nigeria. So I'd like us to join me as I welcome Mr. Clement Popoola as he'll be teaching us on some practical ways to assess the students before we go into asking our questions from everyone that has come to take us this evening. Thank you, everyone. Hello, sir. Can we have you, Mr. Clement?
Hello. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, sir. Hello, sir. Good afternoon.
Can you hear me?
Good to have you. Yes, we can. I can hear you, sir.
Thank you. I want to use this opportunity to thank the first 2 speakers. I want to confess that I have been a student and I have learned seriously from their sharing. I am really blessed to be here this afternoon, and as Mrs. Ebele was talking at the beginning, or Dr. Ebele rather. I thought as we were starting that it's going to be a very exciting time, and actually it has been. However, I want to apologize before I go on that the slides that we'll have used, there was a problem. So my presentation will not be with slides, and I want to ask for our apology on that. Please bear with me that there won't be slides. I want to say that from what the first two speakers have done, my work has been made a little bit easier, and that I will have to be kind of entering in and out of what they have said. By the grace of God, I am somebody who works with exams, so I work on a large scale in dealing with students. Dealing with students' assessment. And what we are talking about is how do we assess assessment in blended learning. I want to say that from what has been shared, there's a need to understand the traditional way of doing things before technology can actually have an impact. Even if you don't have what it takes fully, you can actually ask for help. Like one of our speakers said, that if you know you don't know how to maybe use some of these platforms, or maybe use the assessment like the Kahoot, the Quizlet, and some of the online platforms that have been mentioned, it's important for you to get help. But before getting help, I want to be more traditional in my approach, because in this part of the world where power is not always there, and where we may not have it the way we want it in blended learning, it's good to think of alternatives. And some of the alternatives I'll be talking about is to let us know what some of the basics are. What are some of the basics? Like has been said, after teaching and learning has taken place, there is need for assessment. There's need for assessment. Assessment can be said to be the process of evaluating or measuring the quality, quantity, or extent to which a student has learned, either traditionally or online. It can be formative, ongoing, and having informal checks on students' progress, or it could be summative, it could be formal, it could be at the end of a lesson, it could be at the end of a team. Also, it can be diagnostic, identifying students' strengths and weaknesses. It can be authentic, that is including or involving everyday situations, like has been mentioned earlier. It's good to also know the different forms of assessment so that people can be put into proper perspective. Other forms of assessment can be project-based, they can be standardized, and there are so many others. Assessment methods are also key for us. There are quizzes, there are tests, there are projects, there are presentations, class discussion, exams, homework, group work, peer review, learning analytics, data analysis, self-assessment, etc. Now, some of the assessment methods that have been mentioned can be both online and offline. We can have multiple choice questions, which is what I want to delve into a lot, because that is what I do most of the time. We can have open-ended questions, essay questions, project-based kind of assessment, and simulation-based assessment. As already mentioned, both of these types of assessments can be either offline and online. Thank God for the second speaker, our doctor, who has mentioned that she has used so many learning management system platforms like the Blackboard, the Canvas, the Google Classroom, Microsoft Teams, etc. This will really help, and this will aid assessment. However, before we talk about aiding assessment, we need to know how to go about the construction of some of these assessments that we're talking about. Let's take, for example, the multiple choice quizzes or questions or tests, as the case may be. Before you do that, there's a need to construct a table of specification, or what we call a test blueprint. And there are guidelines that are required in constructing test blueprints. The following are important. You need to determine the scope of the quiz or the test or the exam, the content you have covered. You need to determine it. After determining it, you need to draw a table and give it a suitable title. Determine the total number of items you want to ask. Then match content areas with the tasks involved in each area and each term or year as the case may be, or each lesson as the case may be. Then there's need to assign weight to both content and process objectives such that the total percentage across the content area and the behavioral objectives add up to 100% and the total number of questions to be asked. At this time, I really wish my slides were there, but please, like I pleaded at the beginning, that due to some things beyond our control, we couldn't get the slides. However, I want us to know that in getting a table of specification, there's a need to put this in mind. Determine the scope of the quiz or test, draw a table and give it a suitable title, determine the total number of items, match content areas with tasks involved in each area, and each term or year or lesson, as the case may be, then assign weight to both the content and the process objective, such that the total percentage across the content area and the behavioral objective add up to 100%, and the total number of questions to be asked, respectively. Say, for example, you want to give a 40 question test after covering two topics. I'm in physics by training. I read physics, and in physics we have different topics. We have different teams. If I want to set questions on maybe, let's say, electricity and light, I may decide that the number of questions I want to set from electricity and light may be 2020 at the end of a term. And so I will need a table of specification to be able to do that. That table will contain the contents of physics in electricity and light and the different cognitive levels following Bloom's taxonomy and the Catwell taxonomy. I can spread my questions into these different areas. So after a TOS has been put in place, we now talk of test construction. After you have what you want to ask, the number of questions following the different cognitive levels, we now have to look into how do we construct our tests. Test construction can't start without saying what a test is. A test is a series of questions designed to gauge a person's knowledge. It is also a measuring instrument which will contain series of exercises or questions designed to measure a student's skill, intelligence, achievement, aptitude, ability, knowledge, etc. A test is useful when it is valid, reliable, having a good difficulty index, and good discriminatory index. An item is a subset of a test. It includes the STEM, distractors, option, voice, and responses, and the key. Any question you want to ask that is multiple choice in nature must have a STEM. The STEM is basically the main statement or question, which can be incomplete if it's a statement, or it can be complete. It presents the problem or task and may include charts, graphics, or a table as the case may be. The options, distractors, voice, or responses are the choices or possible answers provided after a question or statement. They should be plausible, that is very close to the correct answer as much as possible, and should be from the subject matter in the STEM. The key is the correct option or answer to the question, or that completes the statement or task given, as the case may be. Now, what are some guidelines to item writing or setting questions that are objective in nature. Some guidelines we have is that, one, the STEM should be meaningful by itself, even without the options. The question you are asking without options, the testee should be able to say, this is what the question is all about. It should contain as much relevant information as possible. Then secondly, we should phrase the STEM as a question or an incomplete sentence, as the case may be, or statement. It should be clear and concise. The rules of grammar should be applicable. There's need to apply the rules of grammar. There's also need to avoid using all of the above or none of the above in our options. There are some times when we are setting questions, especially objective question, multiple choice questions, in order to make it easy for us and to help our assessing, we normally think it's okay to use all of the above or none of the above, but that is not okay. Let's avoid using it at all costs. The STEM should not be a verbal clue to the correct response. For example, if I say, which of the following departments is in the university? And one of my options is Department of Sciences. I've given a verbal clue by putting Department of Sciences. So in setting questions, there's a need for us to avoid giving verbal clue to the correct response by not mentioning things that we have mentioned in the STEM that can serve as a clue. Also, the STEM should not be ambiguous. For example, if I say the President of the United States was born in, that question is ambiguous. Is it the time? Is it the place? Where? There's need for us to be specific and for us to say exactly what we want to test. Statements in the negative should be used sparingly. And also there's need to avoid using double negative. The following are not animals, except. I've used not and I've used except. That's the use of double negative. There's a need to avoid that. Very, very important. We need to avoid that. Statements in the negative should be used sparingly. If you're asking a question, if you're asking about 60 questions, for example, you are permitted to use 1/10 of negative in those questions. That means you can't use more than 6 negative questions having not or except, with the not and except boldened for emphasis. STEM should include as much of the item as possible so as to avoid repetition of words on the options and thereby reduce the time on reading. It's very important that most of what you want to ask should be in the STEM. It's not good in your options when there's repetition of what you want to test in the option. Most of what you want to test should be in the STEM so that the testee has sufficient time to be able to go through the options and to get the correct answer. Lastly, on construction of objective items or multiple choice question, there's need to avoid jargon and textbook language. The need to be original is very, very important, and it must not be downplayed on. The need to be original, even if you have checked some of those tools on the internet, you can edit it, you can clone it to suit what you want to. It doesn't have to be copied verbatim. That would be plagiarism, and it's not accepted in most learning environments. There's need for you to clone and to restructure it so that it suits what you want to ask. If I can just bring in a little bit of a teaser, it's something that we know. If I say, which of the following is an animal? That is my STEM. That is the question. That is the task I want to bring to bear. My options would be A, barley, B, cocoa, C, crocodile, D, sorghum, and E, wheat. Those are my options, distractors, false, or responses. Now, the key, which is the correct answer, is going to be crocodile. Is an easy one, but you can apply it to whichever subject area you are teaching. Know that in setting objective question, there's always a STEM. There are options, distractors, false or responses, and there's a key. After mentioning or discussing the objective type, we want to go to the essay type. The essay type question is more popular than the objective type testing. It is a traditional approach. It doesn't require distractors. It is easy to set and allows for easy adjustment of scores where necessary. There are basically three types of essay tests. We have what we call the short answer type, or the short structure, or restricted type. The first one is the short answer, short structure, or restricted response. The second one is the one that we call the paragraph type, the one that your answer should be in a paragraph. And the third one is the extended response or free response kind of essay question. Again, there are guidelines that will help us when we're generating essay tests. The first, as has been mentioned by the first two speakers, is the need to have instructions of the quiz, the test, exam being made explicit. What you want the testee to do should be made clear. Also, it is necessary to restrict the responses of essay question. For example, in asking the question, it is good to state as part of the question the number of points required, number of words or pages that answers should be given in, if there should be restricted area in where to write or draw, as the case may be. There's also need to make use of a variety of types of essay questions to give spice to essay tests. Instead of making an essay test an extended response, it could be a mixture of the short answer or restricted method, the paragraph, and an extended method, so that students have their feel on whichever one they want to respond to. Also, it's good to start questions with keywords that require students to explain, list, mention, compare, draw, analyze, distinguish, relate, contrast, illustrate, justify, etc. This will require use of different cognitive levels for each of the sub questions. For example, you may want to ask a question that is in the first domain according to Bloom's taxonomy, that is the recall. You may want to say, what is, maybe in physics, what is, maybe take for example, what is energy? It's a definition. You tell us what energy is. Then the other part can be a distinguishing question or a contrast or a comparative question, distinguish between maybe energy and work. And then the last aspect can be an applicative question. You may want to give a problem having to do with calculating the energy expended when a student climbs a step or some steps, the height that the steps are and the distance is such that his mass is known, the height is known, and the acceleration of free fall due to gravity is also known. That would be an example in this light. It's also good to ensure that the length and complexity of the question or questions suit the level of the testees or candidates. It's not good to ask somebody in primary school a question that is meant for secondary school, or a student in secondary school a question that is meant for the tertiary institution. It's always good to have that at the back of our mind. And lastly, on this, it's good to prepare the marking scheme as soon as you have set the question. Immediately you have set a question, let there be a marking scheme. This will help to determine the easiness or otherwise of the question, and it can actually lead to improvement of unsatisfactory items as you prepare the marking scheme. A marking scheme in brief is just a guide showing how marks are awarded. A comprehensive marking scheme should be prepared in advance before administration of a test or exam, preferably at the time you are setting the question. It should have on it factual information. The marks should be allocated for each information and other characteristics. Like in English, they have an acronym COM, where you talk of the composition, the organization, the mechanical accuracy, and the expression. And each of these acronyms have a mark. And also in physics practical, we talk of observation, we talk of graph, slope, intercept, and sub-questions. In each of these areas, we score accordingly. Scoring an essay test should be point by point and not arbitrary. Marks should be assigned to key information required of testees. Points method is useful for screening restricted response type of questions and helping us to know whether the student has mentioned what we actually want or what we do not want. I want to give an example using physics again as my home example, since I'm a physicist. I may want to give a question that goes like this. Mention the two types of wavefront. So there are only two types. I've used the word D to show that I'm mentioning the two types of wavefront. Then the B part, that would be my A part. The B part, define forced vibration. Define forced vibration. This is also a recall question. That's the first part of the B part. Then the second part, distinguish between the vibrations of an air column in a closed pipe and in an open pipe. The C part is an applicative question. A ray of light experiences a minimum deviation of 60 degrees when passing through an equilateral triangular prism. 1, draw the diagram. 2, calculate the refractive index of the prism. In my questioning, you see that I've been able to put in the different levels of testing. I've applied the recall, the comprehension, and the application. I really wish we saw some of these slides. It would have made it clearer. But like I said, we had some hitches that didn't make this possible. But I know that when we're able to, some of these things will be presented. I think I can stop here so that we can receive questions. Thank you for listening. God bless you.
Thank you, Mr. Clement Popoola. We are so grateful for that. And like I said in the chat, that the presentation for this particular session will be available for everyone. The presentation will be shared with us. So we had some circumstance that came up. We had a little bit of challenge with making that available to every one of us this evening. But we'll be making it available to us when I'll be sharing the materials from this event to everyone. So thank you everyone for joining. So at this point, we have a lot of questions from everyone. I believe we have a lot of questions. So this is the time for you to ask your question from the aspect of creating content for your classroom to make your classroom a very, very good and for you to have a good experience, to having some online presence added to your event, also to creating assessments to assess every of those things that you have done. Please, I would like you to do something. I would like you to drop your question in the chat. We also have some questions. Some of us have been dropping our questions in the chat, and we have been receiving responses to that. But please, if you have a specific question you want to ask, probably you want to ask Frances, or you want to ask Dr. Cheryl, or you want to ask Mr. Clement, please, I would like you to just raise up your hand shortly. Just put your hands up so that we can just take the first two or the first three people to raise their hands up will be, and I can also read from the questions that some of us have dropped. So I'm looking forward to the first two people that will be raising their hands up. I think I can see one person, Hilda Oforiwa Owusu from Ghana. All right, I've seen that, the first one. Okay, and who else again? I want one more person before I would put an end. So we're raising up an end to save our time. Who else again? Okay, except those that have dropped their question in the chat. All right, Kerry, I can see your question. All right, Hilda, can you go ahead, please? Ask your question.
Okay, thank you so much, sir. And thank you all facilitators. That was a very wonderful presentation. Please, I want to find out something with the assessment. What are some of the how do I put it? Like I heard of the Canvas, that one. Is it used for assessment? Like when you are to do assessment, which of the media, please help me, like either the Zoom or which of them that is easier to do assessment very well and get a genuine result, so that students will not have that opportunity to copy, whilst you can have an idea of whatever is going on, because it's an online class.
So you're
okay.
I
don't know if it's
respond to
clear.
that. Yeah, I can respond to that. So you're referring to like giving an online assessment and the integrity of the of giving the assessment
Yes.
online. Yeah. So
Yes,
there's
please.
there's a software that's called Lockdown Browser that will lock down
Yeah.
the browser. Say for example, while the student is taking the test, they have to have that on, and you can see the sudden movements if they're like say reaching for other documents or looking at other materials. It's being recorded, their actions, while they're taking
Okay.
their online assessment. So a lot of students don't like it because they know that they're being recorded. So the only way they can take the exam, if you use that lockdown browser, and you will be able to see what they're doing because it's recording their actions individually.
Okay, thank you so
So,
much.
Right.
do a search on lockdown browser. There's just one type of tool that I'm familiar with that use for assessments.
Okay. Thank
All
you
right,
so much.
Dr. Cheryl, please can you help us drop the link to that, or the link to the browser that you talked about, or
I can
the
look it
resources you just talked about? All right, thank you very much. So it will be easy for me to share with everyone. Okay, so, and for your question, to add to that, I think she asked about LMS too. So please can you buttress on the LMS, the Canvas, and how to assess it? Dr. Sherry?
Oh, what's that question?
Yeah, she also mentioned something on the LMS platform. So please can you shed more light on how to assess it, how to use it?
Oh yeah, I mean, even though they're different, they're very similar. I mean, I've worked with Blackboard, I've worked with Moodle, I mean, I've worked with Canvas. They all of them offer, say the option to put like, create your own quizzes in there, and your quiz, but you gotta also, when you put your questions in, you gotta also put in the corresponding answer, right? And so if you do it as a quiz, it'll automatically grade it when they take the quiz, right? And so if you do like an exam, you can do an exam in there as well, but you got to remember, you got to put the the answers, the solution to the questions in those learning management systems. So I think it's good for those formative, type, assessments, as well as let me turn my camera on, as well as summative type assessments as well. So I like it because it grades quickly, especially for the quizzes. I love it for that. Now, if you do like certain activities, ask certain questions, something you might have to manually grade. Like if you're in computer science, you got programs. There are different tools out there that will grade the programs for you. So I know most instructors don't like grading, but again, those learning management systems that I mentioned do allow you to create assessments in them.
All right. Thank you very much, ma'am. Okay, so I saw Charlene. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, Toluwani.
All right, so I saw Sherlin's hands up and Chiamaka. So I think we'll just take that, and that will be all for people that want to ask questions. So I'll just read out the questions out. So can you go ahead, Sherlin, will you go ahead, or Chiamaka, will you go ahead? So whoever is ready to answer the question can go ahead. Okay.
So, like, can I suggest
Sherlin?
we answer the questions in the chat, please?
Yes,
right.
I see Carrie has a lot of questions. She has
Yes.
questions. She says, how do you balance technology integration with maintaining a human connection with your students? Make them turn their cameras on, okay? Because how can you teach a class and you don't know who you're teaching? So the first thing I would do, I would like first day, because have them introduce themselves. If you have a small class, make them turn, that could be one of the norms. To say, that's how I know that you're participating. Your camera is on. If your camera is not on, then that means you're not participating, right? And so have them to turn their camera on, make from day one. If you don't establish that from day one, that you're gonna have a hard time trying to get the students to turn their cameras on later. Or if you allow them to turn their cameras off, you know, when they're speaking, they have to have their cameras on. And also when you send them to breakout groups, you know, as the host or the facilitator, you can go into the groups, right? So if you have 10 groups and they're in that group for 20 minutes, you can just go through each group and just pop in and pop out and then go to another group. So that's one way you can maintain that human connection. And the thing I really, really love about like Zoom and having those breakout groups, I mean, to me, it's a lot of fun, you know, and then they come back and they report out, you know, that helps you to maintain that human connection with your students. How do you measure the effectiveness of your blended learning approach? I mean, ask the students, do a short survey about, you know, some of the tools and the technologies that you've integrated. You know, just do a check-in to see how things are going. And I'm telling you, if you ask the students, they will tell you. So they are already talking amongst themselves about how the class is going. All right. And the third thing, what advice would you give to teachers new to blended learning? Take some of the advice that I've given you already. Don't be afraid. It's okay if you make a mistake, you know, recover from it and keep it moving forward. Be consistent. Because consistency is important. Be organized. And that's the thing about online virtual learning. It's important to be organized, you know, so you have to be very, very structured, you know, and then there are a lot of online resources that you could use. Like I said, integrate some of those tools out there like Kahoots. That's a way to format in a quick way to do formative assessment. So yeah, make it fun, make it engaging, and students tend to like Kahoots.
Okay, thank you very much. That's good. And we'll be sharing some of these resources with everyone after this webinar. All right, so I would like to ask the last question so that we can proceed, and every other questions will be answered. I will be sending a kind of an answer to every other questions while I send the materials to everyone. So someone said, in my own opinion.
One thing, please.
Okay, please.
Just to add to what Cheryl has said about keeping students engaged. Some of the tools that I believe she shared, you can also add like all the gamified games, GameKit or Kahoot. You know, if you are looking at it, all this information is given to you in real time while the students are actually doing the work. So you can tell in real time when a child or a student, because I see another question about if the child is 5 years old. Everything is in real time. If you're using Nearpod, you can tell in real time when they're responding to your questions. and if they're engaged as the lesson is going on. So whether that class is an online class or whether the class is in-person class and you're using a station rotation model, that is real time and can give you instant information if a student is on task or not. So those are some of the ways that you can see if the students are actually on task and see if your students are engaged and interactive with the activity or the lesson that you're giving. I hope this helps.
Okay, thank you very much. All right, Mr. Aziz, please can you mute? What do you want to ask? Please can you mute? Okay, so for the last question, before Frances shares what she wants to share with us, I would like you to answer this question together with what you want to do. So he said, in my own opinion, in this part of the world where students are used to traditional method, of course, we are translating gradually into this system where we can use laptops, or we can use some of these laptops. Majority of the students have phones and the likes, but we are still in this part of the world where not everybody have access to that. And classroom, and you find it difficult to teach all these virtual things that we've talked about. And also the virtual examination might not guarantee them success, because we have seen some situation, let's say for instance, in an institution I know of, while some students go in to take the exams, they come out, another set of students go in. So while they're trying to go in, some students have told them the answers already. So, and how do you ensure that they actually understood what they're going in and they're not depending on this? So can you shed more light on that while you answer or show us what you want to show us? Thank you.
Okay, so I'm sorry, Tolu, can you say the end of that question again?
Okay, so how do we manage this thing? So let me just put it in a simple term. How do we manage this this blended learning in places like Africa, where we don't have access to, not everyone actually have access to all these virtuals, yes, all these phones and the like. So how do we make our class effective even without that?
Yes. So there were a couple of questions that asked that. And of course, like if your students can't get online, that makes a lot of these tools really hard to use. Something you can do is if you have access to a computer and can get access to a projector, you as a class can interact with some of these online tools. It's a little bit different because your students won't be having an individualized experience. But you can still share certain aspects of it with them. So that takes a lot less technology than having a device for every student, for example, or enough devices for them to work in small groups. So that is one thing. If that is ultimately not available to you, of course, a lot of these things aren't going to be that helpful, and that's okay. What I would suggest is, in that instance, focus more on using broader experiential learning tools. So focusing on how can I get my student to have an experience, even if it can't be an online one. So focusing on that is really the direction you have to go. It is true. All of this is really highly dependent on the tech that's available to you. So you can do your best with presenting, doing a larger class interactive, and also take it easy on yourself, because without the tech, a lot of this isn't possible. So yeah, that's the answer there. The thing I wanted to share with you all is a question came up about, because we've been discussing different platforms, and one of the questions that was in the chat was about, okay, the question was, I am a biology teacher. What are there specific resources to biology? And I want to suggest that a really easy way to access tools or figure out what tools to go search for your specific subject area is through actually ChatGPT. So I'm going to share my screen right now with you all. Here it comes. And so what I did, it's very simple. You can go into ChatGPT and they will generate a really nice list of some of the learning platforms that we've already talked about. Khan Academy's in here, Moodle, Schoology, Canvas. We've talked about a lot of those already. So these are really general ones. But when I got that question about biology specific tools, I put in a biology specific question. I said, this is great, the right track, what are the best platforms for biology? And it was able to generate for me some things like Labster, virtual biology lab, visible body, molecular workbench. These are ones I've heard of before. There's ecology specific ones. It generated a list. Oh, Cellcraft, which is like an online biology game that kids can access. I've seen that one before. And the list goes on and on. So what I would say is this is an easy way to generate a list of resources that is going to be specific to your needs. So for example, the people in the chat that were curious about how do I do these things with 5-year-olds? This is a great way to find resources that are going to be appropriate for the ages that you teach. You can come in here and say, I'm starting, you can tell Chat, just type it into the prompt in ChatGPT, I am starting blended learning in my classroom and I work with 5-year-olds. What are some good resources for me? And it will generate a list for you just like this that is specific to your needs as a teacher in your classroom.
Oh, good.
Francis, while you're there, can you also go to Magic School AI? It is ChatGPT, or it's AI for educators. And thank you for showing this, because at this point in our lives, there are so many questions that we have that AI can really give us those responses to. So Magic School AI is AI for educators. So it has everything that you need when how to generate questions and all sorts of things. It's awesome. Toluwani, please add that to your resource as well with the Chat GPT that Francis just shared. It's just amazing. It does a lot of things for educators, and it just helps our lives basically. So I really strongly suggest that we do. There are a lot of resources at your fingertips for educators that we can use and leverage. Thank you, Francis.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mrs. Sebele. Thanks, Francis. I think if we continue, we will not stop today. I know we have a lot of things to share with everyone. So let's watch out for the next event. Let's watch out for the next teachers training virtual point, where we can even come and share our experience of how our classrooms have become better by applying some of these things. And I believe by the time we apply some of these things, would be happy we did, because it's not only help us in our classrooms, it's help us to do the things we are doing, the things we do best, which is teaching, what we love to do. It helps us to do it better and to improve better on it. So thank you, everyone. So I would like to share some few announcements with us. Because of our time, we're supposed to be a 2-hour event, so we have gone behind schedule. So I'd like to rush in to share some things that could also help us in our teaching. So we all know about we are all in different schools, and some of the things WAAW Foundation does is we write recommendations for schools for some students. So in your school, you have some students that are doing very, very great. They're doing awesome stuff. You have high achieving and low income students, and you believe they can do better, but they don't have enough resources. They don't have enough funding to go to school. You can speak with us about them so that in the next cohort, we can work with your school, we can work with you on how you can actually get these students on board. We believe we have a lot of potentials in Africa. We have a lot of potentials in your school, and you can also we can also see to ensuring that it gets the best. And another thing is we have the African Science Academy opened already. So we'll be making recommendations for your students. If you have in your school, you have a very sound girl. This is mainly for the girl child. You have a girl child that is doing excellently well and cannot go to school at the moment. So we have a recommendation opening for them. We have an opportunity there in Ghana. They can go to African Science Academy for a scholarship, and that's for their A level. And while they are there, they get to know a lot of things. And after they are done, they stand a chance of, going outside the shores of Africa to learn better so that they can come back to Africa and also impact into Africa. And I believe that we have a lot of people doing this. So you can reach out to me if you have students that they are very, very good and they are doing very well. You can reach out to me. Let's see how we can bring this together. And let's give some of the students you have been working hard on and they have been doing well in the class and you want to make life easier too for them. Let's see how we can do that together. And that's one of the things WAAW Foundation asks for all of us. So in order to make our students do well, we're also providing support for that. Thanks so much for joining us. So if there's any other announcement or any other thing you want me to share, I would send that to every one of us via emails or via your contacts. And you can do well to always reach out to me at luani@wowfoundation.org. Thank you very much. So the last thing we'll be having this evening, we have somebody amongst us. That's our CEO at WAAW Foundation. That's Timmy. She'll be giving us a closing remark to round this meeting up. So let's give a round of applause for Timmy. I should be giving us the final charge as we go to do better in our classroom to augment our teaching. Thank you very much. Timmy.
All right. Thank you. Thank you very much, Toluwani. Thank you, everyone. Thank you to our amazing facilitators. Thank you, Dr. Cheryl. Thank you, Francis. Sebele, thank you for joining us. Thank you to Mr. Clement. Thank you to all our participants. Thank you for staying with us through till now. We appreciate your presence with us. So we want to tell you that, yes, like Hilda said, are we going to be having this periodically? Yes, we will be having a lot of this in 2025. Stay connected to WAAW Foundation on our social media. Follow us on LinkedIn, follow us on Instagram, follow us on Facebook, WAAW Foundation. And then, check our website from time to time and you see all these announcements when they come up. We are still very committed to advancing STEM education, science and technology in Africa amongst our young girls, amongst our teachers, amongst women in general. So please just stay connected to us on our social media and you see a lot of our programs when they come up. Thank you once again, everybody, for joining us. Thank you so much to our amazing board members for being with us on this program. Thank you to our facilitators. Thank you so much. Stay connected. We look forward to having you on our social media and then you get more of our announcements when they come up. Thank you. Until we see you again on our next teacher training webinar. Thank you so much. Please put everything you've learned into practice and give us feedback. Share your feedback with us via email, on social media when you connect with us. We want to see how you're learning, how you're making use of all these things that you have learned over, the period of time. Thank you so much once again. All right, everybody, let's enjoy the rest of our day. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you, Timmy. Have a good day, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
You're welcome. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.